Hello and welcome back. This is Piano Roadmap. My name is Susan, and today we're diving a little deeper into rhythm and note values. The concept of how long to hold certain notes is not difficult in and of itself. We can look at a quarter note and memorize the fact that we hold it for one beat. It's when we try to read the rhythms with a steady beat in a certain order while playing the piano that it can get tricky. So today, aside from introducing eighth notes, the rule of the dot, and rests, we'll make sure to get a lot of practice with different rhythms. Before we talk about eighth notes, let's do a quick 5-second review of our basic note values. We have the quarter note that gets one beat, the half note gets 2, the dotted half note gets 3, and the whole note is held for 4 beats. But what if we wanted to play notes that are faster than a quarter note? Well, that's not a problem. We just have to split the beat in half or subdivide. When we split the quarter note in half, we're left with 2 eighth notes. Eighth notes get a half of a beat, and they're usually grouped together in 2s or in 4s with a beam. But if they happen to be by themselves, then an eighth note will have a flag. 2 eighth notes take up as much time as 1 quarter note. To count eighth notes, we subdivide the beat, and we do that by adding an and to our numbers. So here are 4 quarter notes in 4/4 time. Now, normally we just count 1, 2, 3, 4. But let's change all of these to eighth notes. Well, now when we subdivide, we'll count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So it's the same tempo or quarter note pulse. We're just adding in an extra and in between. Let's get some practice tapping and counting rhythms with eighth notes in them. Check out our first example. We're in 4/4 time, and we start out with quarter notes. It might be tempting to begin counting without subdividing the beat and just count 1, 2, 3, 4 without the ands. However, if you see that you have eighth notes anywhere in your music, I would always start subdividing from the beginning. So let's label our counting. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Good, and now we're gonna tap out the beat while we count out loud. Okay, so here's our steady beat, and we'll count ourselves in and then begin. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Good, let's try one more time, this time in 3/4 time. Here's a rhythm, and we're gonna label the beats again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, ready? Here's our steady pulse. 1 and 2 and 3 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, how'd you do? Remember, you can always rewind if you want to try that again. Moving on to the rule of the dot. When we learned our foundational note values, we learned that the dotted half note gets 3 beats. Why though? What does the dot do? Well, the dot adds half of the note's value back to itself. So in this case, without the dot, it's just a half note and it gets 2 beats. But when we add the dot, we need to add half of the half note back to itself. So half of 2 beats is 1, and then 2 plus 1 equals 3. And that's why the dotted half note gets 3 beats. Now, what if we had a dotted whole note? Well, a whole note gets 4 beats. If we add the dot, we need to add half of 4 to itself. Half of 4 is 2, so 4 plus 2 equals 6, and that's how much a dotted whole note gets. Let's do one more example. This is a bit trickier, and I want to see if you can get it without my help. How many beats do you think a dotted quarter note gets? Well, a quarter note gets 1 beat. Then we know the dot adds half of that to itself. So what's half of 1? A half. So 1 plus a half equals 1.5. Now that we know how to count eighth notes, we know that we'd count 1 and 2 and leave out the and of 2. Okay, let's try counting and tapping an example with some dotted quarter notes. Of course, we need to label our beats first. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so here's our steady pulse. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, good job. Now, on the opposite side of sound lies silence. Silence is a powerful tool that can convey a bunch of different emotions or feelings, and we notate silence with rests. Let's look at the rest equivalents to the note values that we already know. The quarter rest gets 1 beat of silence, and the half rest gets 2. To convey 3 beats of silence, you have 2 different options. You could use the half rest with a dot, but more commonly used is the half rest followed by a quarter rest. Now, there's something called the whole rest. Because we know that the whole note gets 4 beats, it's a great guess to say that the whole rest gets 4 beats of silence, but this is only partly true. See, the whole rest gets 1 full measure of rest. And since we already know the basics of time signatures, we know that the amount of beats in a measure can vary depending on what note is on top. So with a 4/4 time signature, there are 4 beats in every measure, and the whole rest gets 4 beats. However, if you're in 3/4 time, there are only 3 beats in every measure. Therefore, the whole rest will only get 3 beats. And last for today, we have the 8th rest. And you probably guessed it, the 8th rest gets half a beat of rest, and we count it the same way as we do 8th notes. Okay, are you ready for the ultimate rhythmic challenge? Let's do a rhythm that incorporates everything that we learned today. Whenever you see a rest, instead of tapping, we'll do a shrug motion. Okay, so here's a note, here's a rest. And watch out for changing time signatures. So here's the rhythm. Take a minute to look it over. And then we'll label the beats. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, are you ready? Let's get our steady pulse going. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, how'd you do? That's a little tricky, so I'm going to have a download link below with all of our rhythm examples that we did today. So I would definitely practice those to get really comfortable with all of our new rhythms that we learned. Also, I've revised your musical pattern exercises that we did last week with different rhythms. So, same notes, different rhythms. Keep working on those and see if you can bump up your tempo, maybe 10 to 20 notches. And that does it for us today. Great job, and I'll see you at your next lesson.